Today we're answering the age-old question, can men really be funny? Hello starlets, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the best version of yourself and live your dreams. So if you want to be an Everyday Starlet, be sure you hit that subscribe button. Today I have kind of a unique video for you, but I thought it would be an interesting topic, so I thought, why not talk about it? We're going to explore the masculine and the feminine, which has been a theme I've been exploring here on my channel, and we are going to relate it to the field of stand-up comedy. If you're still with me, welcome. So in case you don't know, because I don't talk about it a lot on my channel, before I started my YouTube career, I actually worked as a stand-up comedian for about 15 years. And actually recently, I've been doing a lot of studying about the divine masculine, divine feminine, and masculine and feminine energies and things like that. And it got me thinking about how that stuff relates to stand-up comedy. I realize this is kind of a niche topic, but I thought many of you might find it interesting. I am gonna give you a little warning for starters. For those of you that are not in stand-up comedy, when you talk about stand-up comedy, like the theories behind it, you talk about the behind the scenes of it, it's not funny, okay? Like when you break down a joke, when you break down comedy, when you really analyze comedy as an art form, it's not generally funny. So if you came here because you saw something about stand-up comedy and you were like, there's gonna be like a laugh every 15 seconds, I'm expecting a stand-up comedy routine, that's probably not gonna happen. That's definitely not gonna happen. I'm sure it's not gonna happen. So that's a fair warning. I don't want anyone to watch this video and not laugh constantly because they're expecting a stand-up routine and then be like, told you chicks aren't funny and whatever. Like, I'm not here doing a stand-up routine. I'm here to talk about comedy as an art form, so I just want to make sure that's clear. Also in this video, I'm going to talk a lot about masculine and feminine energies, and I have a whole video where I delve much deeper into the masculine and the feminine. So if you guys are totally lost, or you guys want to comment because you don't like that I'm talking about masculine and feminine or whatever, I highly encourage you to watch that video first so you kind of understand where I'm coming from. I'm going to give you just a very brief overview. Basically, masculine and feminine energies are energies that are within all of us. They are not gender specific. However, we each have a core energy, which is either masculine or feminine, which may or may not coincide with your gender. You can have a healthy version of either your masculine or your feminine, or an unhealthy version of either your masculine or feminine, and that can happen within anyone. So while it's not gender specific, I am going to reference in this video some things about gender, because I do feel like gender in comedy is something that gets brought up so much, and I'm going to get into that in a second. You could probably analyze just about any career and look at the qualities of it that are more masculine energy traits and things that are more feminine energy traits. I just have a background in stand-up comedy, and I think one of the reasons why I was drawn to do this is because some of you may know this, some of you may not, but stand-up comedy is one of the few careers I feel like nowadays where it's sort of very acceptable to admit that you don't think that women can do it, which is kind of ridiculous. I'm not going to address the idea of like, can women be funny, because it's so stupid. I feel like I've done blog posts about it in the past, but it's just such a stupid argument. Like, of course women can be funny. And the actual field of stand-up comedy, it does tend to be male dominated, as there are more men that do it than there are women. I think there are more women now than there ever have been. There's more women doing it now than there were even when I started. When I started, there were more women doing it than there were like 20 years before that. There are more women that are doing it all the time. It's still predominantly men. And I think that there's probably a lot of reasons for that. I would say the #1 reason for that probably is because most comedy club venues, particularly the open mic ones where you start out, have really horrible ladies' rooms. So that would scare away most women. It used to scare me away from a lot of them, gotta be honest. It tends to be a male-dominated field, which I think is fine, but I do think, I know in my experience over the years of doing it, I felt men were very comfortable in saying that they didn't think women were funny, or you know, that they just didn't find women funny, or my favorite, like, I don't normally think chicks are funny, but you're funny. So I heard that a lot over the years, and it kind of got me thinking, now that I've been studying the masculine and the feminine, if the traits that make up a really good stand-up comedian are actually more masculine, or are they more feminine? So I kind of wanted to break that down. So if you guys want to know some of the traits that make a really great stand-up comedian, and whether or not they are masculine traits or whether or not they are feminine traits, then just keep watching. So I imagine most of you probably think that the first thing that I'm going to talk about is being funny, or having a sense of humor. And I'm actually not going to list that as one of the qualities that I'm talking about, simply because, for one, I don't really believe that being funny or having a sense of humor is a masculine or a feminine thing. I think it can come from different things. I think in general, it could be argued that it's actually a trauma response. For a lot of people, it may be a very productive one, it may be a very creative one, it may not be a very healthy one for some people. But I mean, I know that there's a lot of theories, like, can you teach funny, can you not teach funny? I don't want to delve into this a whole lot, because I feel like that could be a whole video in itself, and that's not the focus of this video. But in general, I think everybody has a sense of humor, and I think everyone has the potential to be funny in certain circumstances, in certain situations. I think some people are more able to, I think for some people, their humor lends itself to certain art forms, whether it be stand-up comedy, whether it be improv, whether it be comedic acting, whether it be, you know, writing, some kind of form. I think, and other people, their humor just doesn't translate well into those areas. Or maybe some people, their humor is just, they react and laugh at things that they find that are funny. I think everybody has a sense of humor to a certain extent. It's just different people have different ways that they express that humor, that they translate that humor, and I just think that that is something that is, it really doesn't have much to do with the masculine or the feminine. It's an individual thing. I think it can either come from just the person, or it can come from their environment, or society, or, you know, trauma responses, anything like that. I really feel like humor is something separate. And I will tell you right now, and I think anyone who actually is in the comedy world or has anything to do with the comedy community will tell you that just being funny is not going to make you a good comedian. I mean, it helps, but there's a lot of other skills that it takes to translate to being a good comedian, and those are the traits that we're going to talk about. So I don't believe that humor has any gender. I don't believe that it is a masculine or feminine energy. You can, if you have a difference of opinion, you can tell me. I do know that there's some studies that show that humor in men is considered a more positive trait, you know, and I mean, I think those are societal things, but I don't really think they serve to talk about right now in this video. So that's kind of why I'm kind of skipping over that. But yeah, I mean, humor is obviously a part of being a comedian, but I don't think that it's definitely not the only thing that makes someone a good comedian, and I don't think that that is necessarily a masculine or feminine trait. So the first quality that I want to delve into as to what makes a good stand-up comedian is leadership on stage, a presence on stage, a command of the stage. I don't know necessarily, you know, how you want to word it. You could word it a million different ways, but it is basically being in control on stage, in control of the microphone. I've had several mentors in my comedy career that have described it as the comedian is like the pilot of a plane, and the audience are your passengers. And when you're on stage and you have the microphone, you really need to let the audience feel like you're in control, like you're in charge. That is a very masculine energy trait. It is, and I think that that is the the thing that people think of when they think that comedy has to be a masculine type of job, which is, I actually had someone, a comedian, veteran comic, say to me one time that the traits the qualities it takes to be a good comedian tend to be male-dominated traits. He wasn't into the masculine or the feminine. It was a little chauvinistic. He didn't say it in a chauvinistic way. He didn't say it in a way of like, you can't be a comic if you're a woman. It was said in more of a, you know, a matter of fact kind of a way. And I think it's that command on stage, it's that leadership on stage that is what people think of when they think that a comedian has to be a man, because that is a very masculine trait, is to have that command of the stage. If you want to take it in more of a sexual way, which I always find weird because I don't think of comedy as being sexy at all, but I think that's because I did it for way too long. In a traditional divine masculine, divine feminine situation, the masculine takes the lead and the feminine needs to surrender, really, in order to release. There you go. And you know, if you take that into a sexual situation, you know, the release would be, of course, I'm trying not to get demonetized in this video, so you know what I mean. But in a comedy situation, that would be the laughter. That would be the release. The audience needs to feel like they can surrender in order to release the laughter. And that takes a leader on stage. That takes a command on stage. If you've watched a lot of comedy, like I have, I will tell you there are a few things that are more uncomfortable than watching a comic who does not have control of the stage. A comic who loses control, a comic who loses their confidence, a comic who gets really uncomfortable, who doesn't have command of the stage. It is incredibly uncomfortable, and it leaves the audience in a state of being really uncomfortable, so they can't laugh. And that really is, in a sense, and again, this is not gender specific, but in general, the masculine energy provides the safety, and the feminine energy can then surrender and release. And that's really what you want from a comic and an audience, is you want the comedian to be in control, to provide a, like, hey, I've got this, so that the audience can surrender and laugh. I told you, when you break it down, it's not funny, but, you know, that's how it works. So I think, again, that is one of the reasons why people associate comedy with men, or with the male gender, so to speak, because that quality in itself tends to be a very masculine quality. That does not mean that women cannot possess that quality. I know a lot of women who possess that quality. I'd like to think I possess that quality when I'm on stage in that setting. And I'm a very feminine core being, but, you know, in that setting, I can tap into that aspect of of myself. And there are a lot of women who can. There's a lot of men who can't. So, you know, it's not a gender specific thing, but that is something that people associate with the masculine. Now, on the flip side of that, if you look at the actual creative process, the creative process of actually writing material, of creating a bit, which every comic does differently, but every comic has to do it. You know, they have to create material somehow. And, you know, there's a million different ways you can create material. Some actually just, like, sit down and physically write. Some have to sit at a computer and they write, they free write, they, you know, freestyle. Some get up on stage, you know, on an open mic and just improv it and try to get stuff out. I mean, some people have to do the writing and then they get up on stage and then they workshop it. I mean, everybody has different techniques for doing that. That creative process is a feminine energy quality. The feminine energy is about creation. The feminine energy literally creates life. It does. I mean, you cannot create life without the feminine. It's not possible. You know, it literally is the creative process. So every time you are creating a bit, creating comedy, creating humor, creating material, you are in your feminine energy. Like, you're in that feminine sense. I mean, it's an artistic energy. It's a creative energy. That doesn't mean that you're a woman. It just means that you are in your feminine energy. And again, we all have the masculine and the feminine that we can tap into whenever we need to. So yeah, so that in itself is actually a very the feminine energy quality. Now, another aspect of the performance of comedy and performing comedy is a very delicate balance. And it's one of the things that I think makes the art of stand-up comedy so different than so many other art forms, is because it really does involve, it's a culmination of so many different art forms that present itself in different ways. So comedy itself is actually a combination of writing, acting, and improv. You really need all of those things in order to create a good stand-up performance. Everybody is stronger at some parts of it than other parts of it. Some people are really strong writers, but they may not be as great a performer, not as great at improv. Some people are great at improv, but they're not so good at the writing part. Like, everybody's got different strengths. One thing, if you're not familiar with this, is I feel like a lot of people that don't know the behind the scenes of comedy don't always know this. In general, with the exception of possibly certain open mics and certain circumstances, for the most part, if you're watching a professional stand-up show that is not designated as an improv show, it is a stand-up comedy show that is a professional show, the comic that's on stage has a set list. It may be a physical set list, like they may have actually sat there and wrote down the order of what their jokes were going to be. It may just be a mental list that they have in their head, you know, either one. But at the end of the day, most comics get up on stage and they have a set list. This next thing I'm about to say may shock people because it is not the societal norm. But making lists and creating that structure, very masculine quality. It's a very masculine trait. I know we don't think of it as that because I feel like the modern thinking is, you know, women are the ones who make lists. Women are the ones who micromanage. Women are the ones who create structure. And many modern women do that, and women can do that. That's not saying that women can't do that. However, when a woman is doing that, she's in her masculine energy. Nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad thing. It's just, it is the masculine energy. It's not a feminine quality to be making lists, to be structured about things. And it is very interesting because a lot of men don't do that nowadays, but there you go. But yeah, that act of creating lists, making structure, is a very masculine quality. So when a comic creates a set list or structure for how they're going to perform their set when they go up on stage, that is a very masculine energied activity. The key with things like stand-up comedy, though, it's not like a monologue where if you were in the theater or something, you would be just delivering it verbatim. In reality, with comedy, you want a reaction from the audience. You expect a reaction, and then you have to react to the reaction. You have to react to the room, the energy of the room, the things that happen in the room. You have to be very reactive to the current circumstances because it is a live form. I mean, in general, most good comedy is done live. So you're reacting to the room. You're reacting to, you know, if a joke gets a really big laugh and the audience laughs for a really long time, you have to then pause for longer. You have to know when it's appropriate for you to then step in and start talking again. You have to, if the joke doesn't get a laugh at all, you may have to react to that, or you may have to just go into the next joke, or you may have to shift where you're going. Or if you showed up and decided that in your set list you were going to talk all about this one topic, and you start talking about that topic and everybody in the audience is like, we have no idea what you're talking about, what's going on, you may have to shift gears, you know what I mean? Like if the waitress drops a whole tray full of drinks and then everything falls apart, you got to react to that. Like you have to react to what's going on in the room. And that reactivity is the feminine. The feminine energy reacts. And you have to be in flow. You have to go with the flow of what's going on. You have the masculine structure of your set list, but then you have to go with the flow, and that flow is feminine energy. The way it's been described to me a lot, which I think is a really great explanation, is if you think about like a glass of water, and the masculine is the glass, and the feminine is the water, and the masculine holds the structure of the water, and the water is flowy, and the water can be flowy, but they're within the container of the glass. And again, that masculine feminine dynamic can happen within each of us. It's not like one needs to be a man and one needs to be a woman. They can all happen within us. But I think it helps sometimes to know when you're in your masculine and when you're in your feminine, which, you know, again, I have a whole other video where I talk about that. But again, being in that flow, being able to move. Another example people use is like, if you think about it as like the masculine being like the tree, and the feminine is like the wind that blows the tree, and the masculine can shift and change, but it always stays in one place. You know what I mean? So the feminine would be the flow. It would be that needing to be flowy and go with the flow and react to what's going on. So it's that combination. So the actual art of stand-up comedy really is a very delicate balance between having a masculine structure and having a feminine flow. I mean, it really, it's being in both at the same time, which is actually, I think, really fascinating. So the final quality that I'm going to mention, because it's not necessarily that it's the most essential quality, but I think it is the quality that takes a good comic and makes them a great comic. And that is vulnerability. It may not be the thing that people think of when they first think of stand-up comedy. I think when people first think of stand-up comedy, they think of like that first trait that I mentioned, of that leadership, of that being strong, of that being in control. And yes, that is essential to doing comedy. But the thing that really makes a comic into a great comic, into a legendary comic, is a vulnerability, which can be very difficult to have and maintain that that solid presence, that that leadership, the structure. I mean, it can be really difficult to then have vulnerability. But the great comics have a vulnerability. They're willing to be seen and willing to be exposed for everything that they are. And that desire and that willingness to do that is a very feminine energy. The feminine wants to be seen. The feminine desires to be seen. And their greatest desire is to be seen in their full truth as who they really are. It's a very feminine desire. And the great comedians tend to have that. It's that wanting to be seen, needing to be seen, and wanting to be seen in their most vulnerable state. Example that I've seen used in this situation would be comics like Richard Pryor, who in general is a guy's guy, he's a man's man, very commanding of the stage, yet he's very open about his weaknesses, which were drugs and women. So it's very, it's that ability to let yourself be seen as being completely vulnerable and show your weaknesses. So those are what I believe to be the traits that are essential for being a great stand-up comedian and breaking them down in the masculine and the feminine. As you can tell from what I've been saying, it really takes a very delicate balance between your masculine and feminine energies in order to be a great comedian. Probably you could break down almost any career and analyze it in this way. I just have stand-up comedy experience, so that's why I'm analyzing this. But if you'd like to analyze your own career, then by all means, go ahead. I think that's great. Because I think I'm fascinated by the masculine and the feminine, and I love learning more about it. So that's why I thought this video would be amazing. And I'm also kind of a comedy geek because I've done it for so long. And again, like I said before, probably a million times, none of these qualities are gender specific. We all have them. We can all possess them. And I hope that in the course of this video, I imagine most people that are probably watching this video probably know that anyone can do comedy. It's not gender specific, but if you did have any doubts as to whether or not women were capable of doing comedy, I hope that this changed your mind. Everybody's capable of doing comedy. I would also like to point out this one other thing, that the qualities that I mentioned were qualities of the healthy masculine and feminine. Many people are not in their healthy masculine and feminine. Many comedians are not in their healthy masculine and feminine. And some may even argue that maybe some of the qualities of a good comedian may be aspects of wounds in the masculine or the feminine. So there is a dark shadow side to the world of comedy. There definitely is a dark shadow side to the world of stand-up comedy. But I chose to stick with the light energy and the positive qualities and the strengths of being a comedian. But most people in the comedy world have shadows, traumas, things like that. It's sort of the nature, I think, of really any artistic field in general. But really anybody can possess the qualities that it takes to be a great stand-up comedian. It's just a matter of honing those qualities, and I just thought it was really interesting to examine the qualities as far as the masculine and the feminine. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative or fun or helpful. If you are a comedian and you watched this because you wanted to learn more about the qualities it takes to be a great comedian, I hope that this helped you when comedy shows come back and people will start performing again and stuff. So I hope you found this helpful. If you're someone who just watched this because you're, you know, kind of a comedy geek and you wanted to know a little bit more about the behind the scenes of comedy and the, you know, the creative aspect of comedy, then I hope you learned something. Yeah, I have a lot of videos that I want to do about the masculine and the feminine because I've been loving studying more about it. So if you have any questions or requests or anything for videos like that, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I love to hear from you. I love your suggestions. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you want to be an everyday starlet, be sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.